I'm a big believer in second chances, even for people who commit serious crimes. Who deserves a second chance? Who gets one? And who decides? I'm Jessica Henry, and I'll be your host of Just Justice. I'm a former public defender, a professor of justice studies, and an award-winning author. And I'm excited for us to find new ways to put justice back into our criminal legal system. Hello, and welcome to Just Justice. My name is Jessica Henry, and I'll be your host. Today, we have the pleasure of talking with Phillip Alvin Jones. Phillip is the founder and CEO of Phillip A. Jones Consulting, which seeks to transform our justice system by working towards a future where justice and rehabilitation meet. Phillip is also currently serving 2 life sentences plus 20 years for a crime that occurred when he was just 19 years old. He has spent more than 30 years in prison, where he inspires both people inside and outside the prison walls. Phillip also hosts the successful podcast, The Wall Behind and Beyond, which you can find on YouTube. Phillip, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It's my pleasure to be here, my honor to do your show, and I'm looking forward to what you're asking and what we can talk about.
I'm so looking forward to it as well. And can we just, Phillip, where are you calling from and how are you doing under the circumstances? Tell me.
I am currently in Washington State at a facility called Airway Heights Corrections Center, to which I've been housed here for about 4 or 5 years. I've been incarcerated for 34, but I'm able to call in and thankfully I can do your show and talk about some of the issues and let you know about my journey.
And how are you doing? Like how are you doing today, for instance?
I had a great day today. I'm feeling well. I went to my carpentry class earlier, built on some projects, came back and did my custodian work that I do within my unit. And now I'm just chilling, watching sports news and talking to you. And I'm happy to be here. The day is all right.
Wonderful. And where are you from originally?
I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, born and raised. I've actually I've lived on both coasts, but I'm born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. My mother was born in California, Monterey, so I always used to go back and forth from the East Coast to the West Coast. But mainly, I started doing my time in Maryland, and then I was transferred out to Washington. So I'm actually still a Maryland prisoner.
Wow, and I want to talk about just that whole transfer process. But before we get into some of that, can you just tell us a little bit about tell us about your background, and your, if you will, your origin story. Sort of tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. Thank you. That's a great question. I came up in the inner cities of Baltimore. I grew up in the 80s. I come from a single parent home, even though my parents were married when I was born. It was a rough upbringing. Parents substance use having substance use disorders. I was mainly raising myself and my 2 younger brothers. So I ventured out to the streets to try to make something happen for us. And in the course of me venturing out to the streets, me and those who come from backgrounds like mine, we kind of joined together and we began to try to do what we had to do to survive. And that led me to criminal activity. But I was still trying to go to school and I was still working part-time jobs and doing little odds and ends here and there, helping people with their bags, helping people to pump their gas, doing whatever I had to do to make sure me and my brothers had something to eat. So my background was based in poverty because of my parents' addictions. And I just did the best I could when they weren't around so that me and my brothers could be okay, have something to eat, and be safe.
Yeah, that's a big responsibility for such a young person. That must have been really difficult.
It was absolutely difficult because it started at 7. I was only 7 years old. My one brother was just born, and the other brother was 3, and I was 7. And my parents were separating, and they were substance users. And so even though they tried their best, even though they struggled with their own demons, it was only so much they could do. So neglect was something prevalent for us. And so we raised ourselves, so to speak, and that made it difficult for us to attend school and things like that because we didn't have nobody to wake us up. We didn't have clean clothes sometimes, and we just didn't have supervision. And so me and my brothers, man, we struggled. And some people say, well, why didn't you call CPS or something? I hear that sometimes because back then the way we was raised, you don't call those people outside of your family, even if it's the worst conditions you can think of, because you don't know what's going to happen if you call them. Maybe it'll get worse. And so I just hope that my situation would improve, and it did.
Yeah, no, I mean it sounds really rough. And you're right. I mean, sometimes creates a worse situation, or you might have been separated from your brothers, which I'm sure was not your intention at that time at all.
No, I wanted to keep us together. I've heard horror stories of children being separated and placed in homes where they was treated worse with abuse and neglect together. And so I just kept calling my other family members, hoping they would come. Um, and for the most part, that's how we went to California a lot because we would get shipped to California because my grandmother was there and she was someone who would take care of us and she was someone who made sure that we ate and that we was in a healthy environment. And so we would go back and forth. And then when my mother would get herself back together on track, we would go back home and then it would start all over again. So we just had a rough upbringing and many children that I know, most of my peers experience the same things. And we don't really address that. And I say that if children are at risk, at 16, 17 years old, and then a year later they turn 18, and then they somehow get caught up in the criminal justice system. What happened to the kid that needed help last year? Now you want to criminalize the kid because they made a mistake that they didn't have no guardrails for. So we have to be careful when it comes to that. And remember, we have to save the kids before we start targeting them for prosecution. So, let's think of some alternatives.
Yeah, I mean, like it's so true. We are, there's so many times that the state could have stepped in for you or for other people who are experiencing neglect or violence or trauma or just, instability at home or with food instability, and they're not there. And then when someone gets involved in the criminal legal system, then the state's all too ready to help. And or it's not to help, but the state's all too ready to be there and prosecute and ultimately imprison people. And you were 19 when you were arrested for this crime. Is that right?
Yes, I was 19 years old.
Yeah, I mean that's so young. And you you said you've served over 30 years. But you initially were offered this was a case where there was a violent crime that occurred. Nobody was killed, but it was a serious offense. And you were offered a plea initially of 9 years, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of people say, "Oh man, you didn't serve that 2 times, more than 2 times. Why didn't you take this deal?" And I tell them that it's maybe something that you don't understand unless you see the full picture. The first thing is that they put that offer on the table, but they said it was a package deal, meaning that me and my co-defendant had to take the deal. And he did not want to take the deal. And at that time, to be honest, I didn't know if I wanted 9 years. I was 19 and I'd never been to prison. So he said, no, nah. I said, well, then let's go to trial. And that was an adolescent mind. Because why would you go to trial knowing you committed a crime? And not only that, your life is on the line. They're saying that you're going to get a life sentence if you don't take that plea. So that was the irrationality of the adolescent mind, which is not fully developed, which we know today plays a big role in us not understanding the consequences of our actions.
Right. I mean, when you're 19, the idea of 9 years is just forever. And of course, that's not what happened. And, obviously you got hit with a tremendous trial penalty. I mean, you got sentenced 2 life terms plus 20. That's an incredibly long prison term and far more than your original plea offer. I know that a lot of folks are sort of talking today about trial taxes and this idea that when you go to trial and you exercise your right to go to trial, you're really hit with penalties that are so much more severe than what you were initially offered. It makes it kind of hard to understand how the system even is supposedly functioning, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my opinion, it's a thing set up for you to say, you're going to take this deal or we're going to hit you with the max. And in my thing, I'm thinking, how do you go from 9 years to 2 life sentences? Well, they run in concurrent, but life is life. But it shows you that that's the consequences and that's the repercussion. Like, you're going to take this, or if you make us pay this money to go to trial, then we're going to make sure you never get out. And I think that that's a mentality. It has nothing to do with sentencing guidelines because, as I said, I had never been in prison before, and I hadn't even had an adult case before this. This was the first case as an adult and my first incarceration. So sentencing guidelines don't go from 9 to life. So I don't, like I say, we need to address sentencing policies in these states and these state courts for that reason.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it doesn't quite make sense. Was it worth 9 years or life as a punishment? To hold somebody accountable like that seems just wild. So you've been incarcerated since when? When did you enter prison?
I went in 1990 at the age of 19. Today I am 54. So as you can see, 34 years, soon to be 35. My co-defendant, by the way, has been released 3 years ago. And we had the same trial, same case. But yeah, we had equal culpability for the offense, and he's home. So, like I say, it doesn't make any sense. And we have to make it so that when one equally situated is given a certain sentence and one is released, then the other one should automatically be released as well.
How did he get home earlier? Like, how did that happen?
My co-defendant, he filed a motion in the state of Maryland called 8505, which is a drug treatment program. If you are granted placement, then the judge vacates your sentence. So when they accept you, you no longer have the sentence that you were sentenced to. And then when you complete the drug program, you just go home.
And he was able to apply for that so late into his sentence.
Yeah. He was able to get it, and I actually filed after him. I wasn't able to get it. I don't have the information as to why, so I won't speculate. I can only say that I feel like if he was eligible for it, then so should I have been.
That seems really frustrating that the person who you were sort of sentenced with is now out and you are still in. But you are doing some pretty incredible things with your time while you've been in prison. What have you done since you've been incarcerated? It seems like you've done a lot.
Well, in 34 years, I have a lot of time to accomplish some things. So when I first came in, I knew that I wanted to get my education. So I immediately got my GED in 1992. And from 1992 to 1995, I was in a 2-year AA college program until I was sent to the Supermax. And after Supermax, I was sent out of state. Once I got out of state, I continued my college degree in a school in the state of Washington. And so I have college credits from both Washington and Maryland, which that's why I'm in a carpentry class now, is because I get credit for that through the community college. And I wanted to have a skill, not just not just a business degree. I wanted to have a skill because of the time that I've been incarcerated, and I would need to be able to have employment immediately, as opposed to my own business. So that said, throughout my period of incarceration, I've taken many self-help classes. I have certifications in all kinds of self-help programs, such as Redemption X, House of Healing, reentry program, alternatives to violence, you name it, I've taken. everything they offered within the system. And then after those achievements, I was like at a place where now I wanted to do something with the skills that I had developed and the knowledge that I had accrued. So I started my own platforms that I could translate from here to the community. So I wrote a book. I wrote a reentry book, Exit to Excellence, and then I wrote a gang prevention manual called From Risk to Resilience. From that, I platformed to my nonprofit, Inside Outside Consults, and I started a scholar program for at-risk youth to try to avoid these young men being recruited into gangs and stuff like that to help them with their education. My consulting business, finally, is one that I use so that I can sit at the table, have a seat at the table when policies and legislation and all of these things are being discussed. Because who better than someone who has been in this environment as long as I have to understand the needs of those incarcerated? And finally, my podcast. I created that because I wanted people out there who had no experience to understand what incarceration looked like or what reentry was about, to hear it firsthand from not only myself, but other individuals who had either successfully returned or who are still in, to talk about the complexities of what prison life is like. So I appreciate that question, and I'm still a work in progress.
Well, you're an amazing work in progress, and you just said so many things, and I want to talk about all of them, but I think we'd run out of time. But why don't you? The last thing I think you said, maybe is out of all the ones there, I want to talk to you about all of them. But the last thing you said was the purpose of your podcast was to kind of help people who maybe don't know about the experience of incarceration, get a perspective on it. And I'm wondering if maybe you could share your perspective on that for folks who are listening who may not really know about what incarceration looks like, what the experience is like.
Well, I always like to start off by saying that prison is a microcosm of the macrocosm, which is society. So everything that exists out in the free world exists on a smaller scale on the inside. The difference is that inside you have supervision and authority, you have administration. So whatever you do, it's on some type of timeline and schedule. Out in society, you choose your own, and that kind of handicaps and cripples people when they don't really have a say on their life, on the daily existence of their life. So the perspective I have is that prison is what you make it. And so if you come into prison and your mindset is, I'm going to view it as a college campus for learning, I'm going to view it as a place for me to improve myself and uplift myself so I can be a better human being, then that's how you're going to do your time. You're going to choose programming, you're going to choose education, and you're going to choose friends or people that you engage with who are positive. But if you come in with the mindset that, I'm just going to go in here and become better at being a criminal, then they have that for you as well, because it's always people here who have not learned the lesson and who are not ready to change their lives. So my perspective is just that we also need those employed in DOC to become more like mentors as opposed to just being disciplinarians and rule makers and stuff like that. Like they do kind of like in the Norwegian style prisons. They treat you as a human being. So Mr. Jones or Phillip, how was your family? How was your day? These things, they keep us humane. And so that's my perspective.
Yeah, it's. I think you're right. Like there are opportunities in prison. Although I actually and I want to go back to Norway too. You keep Right, Phillip, you keep raising too many interesting points all in one answer, and then I don't even know where to go because I want to talk about all of it.
Yeah.
But you said, so before we go to Norway,
Mhm.
I did want to ask you, you are serving a life sentence, and it sounds like you have been able to participate in a lot of different programs. But that's not necessarily the case for everyone, right? A lot of times, lifers, people who are serving life, aren't eligible for programming. So how has that worked for you?
Well, That's the truth of the matter. Actually, I have not been allowed to participate in a lot of programs, but I have worked my way around it. Um, for a long time, I was told, you got to get on the long waiting list because we put the people as preference who have a release date or who are scheduled to leave within 3 or 4 years. And I was thinking to myself, um, education is what improves a person. Education gives a person different values. So if I'm not allowed to educate myself, how do you expect me to be better, whether I'm here or out in society? Um, and so for those who don't know, everyone in prison is not offered the same opportunities as others. They want people that's closer to the gate, which I understand because they're on their way out, but they should offer it to all people in prison because even those that still here or have to be here longer, education is the key to their transformation. And so, yeah, that's been my experience. But I was able to get around it because I started creating programs for myself. I started teaching my workbook. I started being a mentor. And so once you start doing certain work inside, you're starting to be known for that. And that goes along with your inside resume. And then they want you to participate in certain things.
Because you'll set the positive tone, you'll be the mentor in the classroom, which is so important to keep the programming going.
Yes, for sure.
And I mean, you do seem like such an incredibly positive person. And prison can be a really dark place sometimes. So, I'm struck by your what they call the orientation towards hope. And I'm wondering how do you maintain that positivity? How do you maintain that hopeful focus?
I believe in thought transference. I believe that my focus has been almost my entire incarceration society. So what I mean by that is that I don't I think outside. All of my thoughts, all of my dreams, all of my visions, all of my ideas, my plans, they're outside. So I don't I'm here physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, I'm already free. And so that's the catalyst to me staying on the path that I'm on because I don't belong here. And like one thing that Clover says often is that you outgrow the box that they have you in, which is prison. I've outgrown it. I can't fit in it anymore. And so for me, the entire focus is my freedom um, and prosperity, and also me to contribute and give back to my community. So I'm always on the phone. I'm always on some type of podcast where I'm talking to people on the outside. And so I'm more engaged in the free world than I am in this one, even though I still function here relatively well because I choose the path that I'm going to chart.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really I got the goosebumps. I got goosebumps when you said that, you're physically there, but your sort of your being is oriented towards outside. That's woo. um, now you were talking about Norway. Tell me about Norway. Like, what do you think about the Norwegian prison system, and how do you think it relates to the American criminal legal system? Because they're quite different.
Well, thanks to my podcast, I was able to interview two Norwegian filmmakers who had done quite an extensive investigation on the Norwegian system. And so I started getting all kinds of material and literature. Um, I think it's excellent. I saw pictures of their cells. Their cells are not cells. There's no bars.
You have 1 minute left.
Mm-hmm.
They have heaters. They have open windows. They have computers, desktops. They have beds with a box spring and a mattress on a frame, and they have big mirrors. So, and then their doors open, and they can interact with officers and CO and staff, and they come in their room and sit down and talk to them. Can you imagine? That's keeping people in the thought process of being human, as opposed to just being a number, some type of end where you act that way. So I'm gonna stop here because it's gonna cut off, and I guess we can resume when I call back.
Perfect. I'll be right here.
Okay.
We'll be right back with Phillip Jones. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So we were just talking about the Norwegian prison system, and you were sort of saying how much more humanely people are treated, how sort of dignity, the idea of individual dignity is sort of center to the whole vision of Norwegian prisons and punishment and accountability. Um, and you said one thing though that I did just want to, you sort of said, can you imagine they have these rooms, these cells that don't look like cells? They have mattresses and bed springs. What do you have?
Well, so that people are aware of the American style prison, we have steel bunk beds and a mattress laid on top of it. We have a desk table, which I'm sitting at now, which is okay, that swings out. We have a door. I'm in medium custody, so we have a door with a window in it, and we have keys to our door. Um, when you get to medium level, once you get to when you're enclosed or maximum, you get no key. It's just the bars and the doors swing closed, and you can't get out until they let you out. But having said that, it's not you can't open your door and invite anyone in. You can't sit in your cell with another person and talk. You can't do any of that. All of those are rule violations. So it appears as if okay, well that seems humane enough, but that's it's not natural because you want to talk to people in your environment and you want them to be able to come see how you're living and have a discussion like you would out in the world. So that's the difference between the American cell. We have tablets, we have TVs, we have and stuff like that, which is all cool. They're starting to change that kind of stuff, but that's landscape. Uh, it's not interaction. It's not like we said, dignity. It's not respect. It's not humanity. It's this. We'll give you these things, but these are the rules. This is what you got to do. If you don't do this, we'll take them. That kind of thing. So it's just a lot different. The mentality is different, and that's the part that we have to improve.
Yeah, right. The correctional system's vision isn't one of restoring and reformation. It still continues to be very punitive and very punishment oriented um, in ways that don't sort of cultivate hope. You have to find it on your own, like you seem to have done. And one thing I wanted to ask you, I know that you're a super big reader. I'm a huge reader too. So what's your favorite book? Do you have a favorite book right now, or what are you reading right now?
I'll tell you what I'm reading right now, but I don't have a favorite book because I read hundreds of books and I love most of the books, but I'm more into biographies and history. Right now a book called
Okay.
I'm reading a book right now called The Book of Power. Um, and this is a book by Mitch Horowitz. It's the greatest works of the ages on attaining mastery, magnetism, and personal power. And it basically has like seven books in one. Uh, just breaks down for you how, as a person, it even talks about think and grow rich, and the concept of what your mindset is, which is what you attract. And so I love that type of
Mm.
ideology because I've always said that if no one can fix us, but we can build ourselves, we can remake ourselves, and in order to do so, we have to learn, we have to know how. And so these books tell you that what you think is what you're going to materialize within your life. And so I'm constantly reading, but I'm just big on reading. I just love reading because it takes me out of my environment. It also gives me the ability to answer certain questions that people ask me that I otherwise may not have an answer for. So I like that. So that's big. That's me.
Yeah, I love reading too. So that's awesome. And I love do you have the books with you physically, or is it like a library system?
No, I'm able to order books, so I'm constantly ordering books. I just got Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. I've had it before. I've read it many times before, but a lot of my books I've sent out because when you get a certain amount of books, you have to send books out.
You
So
have to.
sometimes I find
Hmm.
myself
Hmm.
buying the same book over again because I want to go back through it.
Right.
The more mature I get, the more understanding I grasp. I'm like, let me go back and read that
Hmm.
book again
Hmm.
because I know that I'll get something else out of it than what I did 5 years ago.
I love that. I love when you can go back in and find that extra special nugget that
Hmm.
you didn't maybe catch the first time.
Yes.
So not only are you this big reader, not only have you created workshops and workbooks that help people when they're reentering the community or people who are, trying to divest from gang affiliations or whatever. But you also have this podcast that we were sort of talking about, The Wall Behind and Beyond. And I'm wondering if you could tell us where you got the idea for creating a podcast and what the name of it signals to you? What's the symbolism of the name, The Wall Behind and Beyond?
Well, first and foremost, we got to get you on the show because it will be an amazing show. So I'm inviting you right now, publicly in front of the world. But
I would be delighted. I'd be honored.
absolutely, thank you. But the wall behind and beyond, it signals that it was started here behind the wall, and that we are not going to stop until we get beyond it. And even if we are not beyond it, we can talk to people who have stepped beyond it and get their experience of what that was like and how, as a returning citizen, they are doing today. So I not only talk to people that was incarcerated, I talk to people who study the field of corrections. I talk to people who comment on corrections. I talk to law professors and lawyers. I talk to all the criminal justice advocates. I talk to everyone who has some type, even the people who have loved ones who are incarcerated. I talk to them. We want a full perspective of what this looks like. And we want it from all walks of life and from all corners of life.
And did you need like special permission from the prison to do a podcast? I mean, I can't imagine everyone could just be like, "Hey, I want to launch a podcast." I mean, that seems pretty special.
When I first started, I did a mental health panel, and I didn't ask no permission or anything. My network was like, "Hey, let's do a criminal justice. Let's do a mental health podcast. Mental health panel." My bad. I'm so excited. So when they asked me about it, I was like, "Sure, let's do it." I had no idea. I never did a podcast or anything, so we did it, and it was such a great reception. And so after that, a friend of mine named Chris, who was running a podcast on the outside, he said, "Man, have you ever thought about doing a podcast from inside, man? Yeah, that would be a great niche." And I was like, "Nah." He's like, "Man, I got a podcast that I'm not even using right now." He said, "Man, I'll help you out. I got all the equipment." So that was the beginning of it. And from there, we launched into, we had to figure out a name. So I said The Wall Behind and Beyond. And so we started doing shows. At first, there was only audio. And then we started to evolve in audio and video. But to answer your question, the administration, I never thought to ask permission to do it. I just knew I had the ability to use the phone. I just knew that I could call out of here. So I have a right to use the phone. I have a privilege, but it's a right unless you abuse it. So they never said nothing to me. No one ever said anything to me, but they all know that I have it because they're constantly saying, "Don't you have a podcast?" And some of them say, "Hey, I listened to some of those episodes." And so I guess they don't,
Yeah.
it's not, they know it's not negative. They know it's not harmful. They know I'm not bashing anybody. I'm just talking about the facts. And so they haven't even bothered me. They never told me you can't do that, and they never punished me for it. So I've just been rolling. It's been over 100 episodes.
That's amazing. I mean, that's amazing. Really, from a new podcaster to a OG like you, that's amazing. 100 episodes is a big deal. Now, though I know I said we'd get back to it. So, how did you get transferred to Washington if you're technically still a Maryland prisoner?
So here's the beginning of the conundrum. I didn't always start off as a prisoner who was doing model things. I wasn't always someone who followed the rules. And the reason for the writing of the book From Risk to Resilience, myself too was a gang member, and as a gang member in the state of Maryland, I have been involved in all kinds of criminal activities, and I was just what they call off the hook. I was like 20, 22 years old, 23 years old. And I still had that same mentality that I came in with. And so, needless to say, I started getting into a lot of trouble. I stayed in a hole. I went to the Supermax for 5 years, 23 hours a day lockdown for 5 years straight. And when I was ready to get out, I had already denounced gang activity while I was still in because I had read so many books and I had just became a different person while I was in the Supermax. So on my way out the door, they were like, we're going to send you out of state. We no longer want you in the state of Maryland. So we're going to swap you for someone in the state of Washington. And so they had been doing that a lot, actually. I wasn't the first one. They had been sending people out a lot. And that's how I found myself in the state of Washington, where from the time I got here, I had decided already that I was going to turn a new leaf and that I was going to be someone who was anti-gang and to help other young people who was in my same circumstance to make better choices.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And so you spent the last 20 plus years in Washington then.
I've been in Washington since 2005, so I actually did more time here now than I did in this. I did 15 in Maryland, and then the other, I guess,
Okay.
was that 21 here or 20 here, and yeah,
Yeah,
and
20.
yep.
And so I know you had these life terms, but are you eligible for parole?
Oh yeah, I'm currently up for parole right now. I'm just waiting on a decision from my state, Maryland. Um, and I'm in line with I'm doing the right things. They've told me I'm doing an excellent job. Keep up the good work. But right now I have to wait for their final decision, which we pray, in which we believe the outcome will be just, and I will have parole shortly. So I pray for that every day, and I keep doing the work that I'm doing to show that I am someone who is deserving.
So you had a parole hearing, like you're really just waiting now.
Yeah, I went for parole actually in 2023, and this is the process. This is how long it takes for a final. Well, the first time I went up, they asked me to come back in 2 years, and then the second time
Okay.
they said we're going to push it through, and now we want you to do a risk assessment. So this is where we're at currently.
Okay. And then once the risk assessment comes back, then they make a final determination.
Yes. And if they decide that I am deserving of parole or that they want to grant it, I should be home post haste, a few months afterwards or a few weeks, whatever that process is. I've never been out on parole, so I only know what I hear.
Well, I'm going to knock on wood for you. I'm knocking. I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah, I
For
heard that.
good
Thank
luck. And now the other exciting thing that's coming down the pike is while you're even waiting for this parole decision, there is also a big change in Maryland law, which I'm sure you are following very closely, the Maryland Second Look Act. Um, and my reading of the act is that you might be eligible to seek resentencing under that law. Is that right?
Absolutely. I am eligible. It doesn't go into effect until October 1st, so I'm trying to make parole before then. But it's good to know that if I don't make parole before then, that I can file a motion for modification or reduction of sentence in October, um, and that's awesome. And I'm so grateful that they were able to pass that bill, and Governor Westmore signed off on it. And so that's just like a second uh, chance for me to be able to go into there and get my sentence reduced or modified. Um, a lot of people.
And for the listeners that don't, oh,
Yeah, go ahead. All right.
sorry, go ahead. No,
No,
you go ahead.
I was just going to finalize that by saying um, it's been a long time coming. I have two avenues for release outside of the courts, and so I'm thankful for that, and I'm going to take the first one that comes.
Sure. And for the listeners that don't know what this Maryland Second Look Act did, is it said that for people who are under the age of 25, right?
Yes,
Who committed a crime under the age of 25 and who've served 20 years, they can petition for resentencing. There are some folks who are excluded from the law, but in general, that's the general thinking. And the reason for the law is that, as we were talking about earlier, the neuroscience says that, people, that 18 is such an arbitrary cutoff between adults and juveniles. And that really the adolescent brain continues to develop until you're 26. And so this law is a reflection of that. And if somebody like Phillip Jones can come in and sort of say, look at all the things I've done and who I've become, then it gives a really good hook for resentencing because, if they're not a threat, you're not a threat to public safety and you're doing great things, society would be so much better with you on the outside. And that brings me, I think, to my final question,
Mhm.
which is really, what do you think? Do you think everyone deserves a second chance, or what's your thinking and feeling and philosophy about second chances for people who are incarcerated?
I think everyone deserves an opportunity to at least have a second chance. We live in a nation of second chances. We are the home of second chances. So we all make mistakes. I believe that an opportunity should be presented to people who have mistakes, even the worst mistakes, to be eligible for a second chance. Because if you give a person a second chance and they are not truly deserving, then they'll turn around and do something else and they'll end up back in the situation again. And this time you can say, we gave you a chance, but you blew it. So I always say, give a person a chance. Doesn't matter what their offense was because we don't know the circumstances of their life story. We don't know the traumas they suffered. We don't know have they been in the hands of abuse, neglect, or have what has happened to them in their childhood. So I'm definitely a proponent of that. I'm also a proponent of restorative justice. So let me make that clear. If a person is worthy of a second chance, then we believe, well, I believe personally that they should restore justice, meaning they should be accountable for their actions. They should take responsibility. They should also make amends. They should reach out to that person they've harmed and see if they can make the person accept the fact that they have changed. And then finally, those two people heal together. So restorative justice, it should be a part of second looks and also reentry.
Yeah, right. What about reentry?
Meaning that
Oh, just that restorative justice should be part of reentry.
no, what I mean is that when I say reentry should be a part of it, meaning that once you become a candidate for second chances and you have been given that opportunity, you should be required also to take a reentry class or program so that you can be properly fit and prepared to reenter your community, not doing any more harm to yourself, community. Being a returning citizen comes with responsibility.
Mm-hmm. It does. And so I think that's a really a great place to stop. That this idea that justice and second chances requires accountability. It requires restorative justice. It requires healing. It requires reentry